A loving smile hid a deadly secret, as her sister's jealousy slowly poisoned the blood they shared. The village of Umu woke each morning to the sound of roosters and soft laughter drifting between mud brick homes. Palm trees swayed gently in the warm breeze, and red earth paths carried familiar footsteps that had known each other for generations. In this village, people believed they knew one another's hearts as well as they knew their names. Under one modest roof lived two sisters. They shared the same father, the same mother, the same blood, and yet, something about them felt quietly different. The younger sister, Beatrice, moved through the village like a blessing people didn't know they were waiting for. She greeted elders with respect, helped neighbors without being asked, and carried kindness the way others carried baskets, naturally, without effort. When she smiled, it reached her eyes, and when she spoke, her voice soothed. Women trusted her with secrets. Children ran to her when they fell. Even strangers felt safe around her. Then there was Caroline. Caroline was never cruel. She never shouted or caused trouble. She swept the compound, cooked the meals, and followed the rules. But where Beatrice was warm, Caroline was quiet. Where Beatrice's presence filled a space, Caroline stood slightly apart, watching, listening, noticing. Her eyes missed nothing, especially not the way people leaned toward her sister without realizing it. In the evenings, the sisters sat side by side, sharing meals and stories as the sun dipped below the trees. Neighbors often passed by, calling out greetings, praising their mother for raising such good daughters. And Caroline would smile too, because that was expected. Because in Umu, sisters were supposed to love each other. But love can exist alongside something darker. No one in the village saw it. Not the elders. Not their mother. Not even Beatrice, who believed goodness was always enough. They saw two sisters walking the same paths, fetching water together, praying together, laughing together. Who would ever question a smile shared between sisters? At night, when the compound grew quiet and the village slept, Caroline often lay awake, staring into the darkness. The sound of Beatrice's calm breathing filled the room, steady and peaceful. The same roof. The same mat. The same blood. Why does everything come so easily to her? It was a thought Caroline never spoke aloud. She buried it deep, under duty and silence, under the belief that such thoughts made her a bad person. After all, she told herself, she loved her sister. And love meant protection, didn't it? In Umu, trust was a language spoken without words. People drank water offered by neighbors without fear. They left children in each other's care. They believed danger came from outsiders, not from within the family. And so, the village trusted the two sisters completely, especially the one who smiled the most. They did not know that this was how tragedies often begin. Not with hatred. Not with violence. But with quiet calm. Beatrice did not wake up each morning trying to be admired. She woke with the sun, tied her faded wrapper neatly at her waist, and began her day the same way she always had, with quiet purpose and a gentle heart. She swept the compound while humming soft songs that drifted into the morning air. Her voice carried peace, the kind that made tired hearts feel lighter without knowing why. When neighbors passed by, they stopped to greet her. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Her smile made people feel seen. At the market, women called her name and pressed extra tomatoes into her hands. At the stream, young men offered to carry her water pot, embarrassed when she thanked them with honest warmth instead of shy flirting. In church, when Beatrice sang, even the restless children grew still. There was something about her presence that made goodness feel possible. And Caroline saw it all. She stood a few steps back, her hands busy, her face calm. She watched how praise followed her sister like a shadow that never left. She noticed how elders nodded approvingly when Beatrice spoke, how laughter gathered around her without effort. Caroline listened as people said, "Your sister has such a good heart," as if goodness were a gift handed out at birth. Caroline did everything right. She worked hard. She obeyed. She endured. Yet the world seemed to look past her, eyes already fixed on the light standing beside her. The comparisons were never spoken, but they lived in the spaces between words, in the silence after compliments meant for someone else. Was it wrong to want to be seen too? Caroline tried to explain it to herself. Maybe it was beauty, she thought. Beatrice's skin glowed in the sun, her laughter came easily. But Caroline was beautiful as well. Maybe it was age. Beatrice was younger, after all. But only by a year. None of the reasons settled the ache growing inside her chest. Why does love follow her without asking, while I must stand still and wait? Their mother noticed the difference, though she rarely spoke of it. Once, she watched her daughters from the doorway, Beatrice laughing, Caroline silent. There was sadness in her eyes, the kind that comes from knowing something is wrong but not knowing how to fix it. Beatrice never noticed the weight her light placed on her sister. She moved through life believing there was enough goodness for everyone. She believed kindness multiplied when shared. She did not know that for some hearts, another person's shine feels like proof of their own darkness. And so, day after day, admiration gathered around Beatrice like a crown she never asked to wear. And day after day, Caroline stood close enough to feel its glow, but far enough to feel unseen. That was how envy was born, not from hatred, but from standing beside a light for too long without believing you had one of your own. At first, Caroline told herself it was nothing. Just small thoughts. Passing thoughts. Harmless thoughts that came and went like clouds. She compared the way people greeted Beatrice to the way they greeted her. She noticed how conversations paused when her sister spoke, how laughter rose more easily around her. Caroline smiled through it all, because smiling was safer than asking why. During chores, they worked side by side. When Beatrice pounded yam, neighbors praised her strength. When Caroline did the same, no one noticed. When Beatrice fetched water, people offered help. When Caroline went alone, the path felt longer, heavier. These moments stacked quietly, one on top of another, until they became a weight Caroline carried everywhere. She loved her sister. She was sure of that. She had shared a mat with her as a child, shared secrets, shared dreams. But love, when mixed with constant comparison, begins to change shape. It bends. It tightens. It grows sharp edges. At night, Caroline lay awake listening to the village breathe. The insects sang. The wind brushed the roof. Beside her, Beatrice slept peacefully, as if the world had never disappointed her. Why does she get everything without asking, while I beg in silence? The thought scared Caroline. She pushed it away again and again. She reminded herself that envy was ugly, that good daughters did not think this way. But the more she fought it, the stronger it became, like a fire fed by denial. Her mother's words echoed in her mind from a conversation long ago, the heart that carries bitterness carries stones. Caroline felt those stones now, heavy and unyielding, pressing against her chest. She walked slower. She spoke less. Even her smiles began to feel like masks. The village continued to praise Beatrice, unaware of the storm gathering nearby. They spoke her name with affection, never realizing that every compliment landed like a quiet wound in Caroline's heart. No one asked Caroline how she felt. No one noticed her silence growing deeper. Was it truly Beatrice's fault that the world loved her? Caroline knew the answer, and yet resentment did not listen to reason. It whispered lies that sounded like truth. It told her she had been cheated, overlooked, forgotten. It told her that fairness had skipped her door and knocked only on her sisters. Slowly, love twisted into something unrecognizable. Not hatred, not yet, but a cold distance. Caroline began to watch Beatrice differently. Her laughter no longer sounded sweet. Her kindness no longer felt innocent. Each smile felt like a reminder of everything Caroline believed she lacked. And still, Caroline said nothing. Because jealousy grows best in silence. It feeds on unspoken pain and unanswered questions. It turns sisters into strangers standing inches apart, breathing the same air, yet living in completely different worlds. By the time Caroline realized her thoughts were no longer harmless, they had already begun to shape her heart. The comparison that once hurt her had now become a compass, pointing her toward a place she never intended to go. The week the village began whispering about marriage, something shifted in Caroline's heart. Chief Okonkwo had announced that Chinidu, his educated and respected son, would soon choose a wife. The news traveled fast, carried by excitement and hope. Mothers straightened their daughters' wrappers. Young women laughed louder than usual. Dreams quietly rearranged themselves. Chinidu was everything a family prayed for, kind, hard-working, destined for honor. And when Caroline heard his name, her heart stirred with a feeling she had not allowed herself to feel before. Hope. A careful, fragile hope that maybe this time, she would be chosen first. For days, she imagined it. Standing beside him. Being seen. Being admired. finally stepping out of her sister's shadow. But hope is delicate. And it breaks easily. One afternoon, as the sisters prepared supper, Chinedu passed their compound. His steps slowed. When Beatrice looked up from stirring the pot, their eyes met. He smiled. Not a polite smile. Not a passing one. A warm, lingering smile. Beatrice smiled back, the same way she smiled at everyone, open, unguarded, unaware. Then she returned to her cooking as if nothing had happened. Caroline's hands froze. Her chest tightened as if something invisible had wrapped around her heart. She watched Chinedu walk away, her thoughts racing, her breath shallow. That single smile echoed louder than any words. Not again. Please, not again. From that moment, Caroline noticed everything. How Chinedu found reasons to pass by their compound. How his eyes searched for Beatrice even when Caroline stood directly in front of him. How his voice softened when he spoke her sister's name. Caroline tried harder. She dressed better. She laughed louder. She placed herself where she would be seen. She served water with practiced grace, bent slightly, smiled sweetly. Chinedu was polite. He thanked her. But his attention drifted, always drifting, back to the quiet sister who wasn't trying at all. Was it wrong to want something that could finally make her feel enough? The envy inside Caroline sharpened. It was no longer a dull ache. It was a blade. Each glance Chinedu gave Beatrice felt like theft. Each smile felt deliberate, even though Beatrice remained innocent, unaware of the war growing beside her. Caroline's thoughts darkened. This was not just about love anymore. It was about worth. About proving, to herself, to the village, to the world, that she mattered just as much. She told herself she deserved this. That she had waited long enough. That life owed her something. And slowly, quietly, desperation replaced reason. Love had entered the house, but envy had taken control. What once was silent comparison now demanded action. Caroline stopped asking why and started asking how. How do you win when goodness always comes first? In that question, the final barrier fell. Because when envy turns love into competition, it no longer cares about cost. It only cares about victory. That evening, the house was unusually quiet. The kind of quiet that makes every movement sound louder than it should. The kind that presses against the chest and forces the heart to speak. Caroline moved slowly, deliberately, as if time itself had thickened around her. Her face was calm. Too calm. The storm inside her had learned how to whisper. She prepared the evening water as she always did. Same clay pot. Same cups. Same routine. Anyone watching would see nothing different. Her hands did not shake. Her eyes did not wander. Only her thoughts betrayed her. Beatrice sat nearby, humming softly, unaware of the danger sharing her air. She spoke about the day, about small village matters, about nothing important. Her voice was gentle. Trusting. Familiar. Caroline listened, nodding at the right moments, smiling when expected. This is just one step, just one small step. The poison was small. Almost invisible. Something meant for pests, something she told herself was harmless in such little measure. She didn't think about consequences. She didn't think about tomorrow. She only thought about stopping the pain inside her chest. She poured the water carefully and carried the cup to Beatrice. Their eyes met. Sisters. Same blood. Same home. Same past. Caroline smiled. It was a warm smile. A convincing one. The kind that carried no warning. The kind people trust without question. Beatrice smiled back, grateful, never imagining that love could wear such a face. Was a single choice really powerful enough to destroy everything? As Beatrice lifted the cup, Caroline felt a strange relief wash over her, quick and sharp, like a breath taken after drowning. The decision had been made. The line had been crossed. There was no turning back now. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with something darker. Satisfaction mixed with terror. Control mixed with guilt. She told herself it was fate. She told herself it was fairness. She told herself anything that would quiet the voice screaming inside her. Beatrice drank. Nothing happened at first. Life continued in its cruel normalcy. The fire crackled. The night insects sang. The world did not pause for what had just occurred. And that was the most frightening part of all. Caroline watched her sister closely, every breath, every blink. Her smile remained fixed, almost painful to hold. Inside, her thoughts raced faster than her pulse. I didn't mean for it to go this far, did I? But even as the question surfaced, she pushed it away. Regret, she believed, was for later. Right now, she needed to believe this was the only way. That love had forced her hand. That envy had simply guided her where destiny already pointed. Yet somewhere deep within, something broke. Because the moment Caroline chose harm while pretending care, she poisoned more than water. She poisoned her own soul. The blood they shared would never be clean again, not after betrayal had been served with a smile. That night, Caroline lay awake, listening to her sister breathe, each sound tightening the knot around her heart. She had wanted to be chosen. Instead, she had chosen darkness. And morning came, but it did not bring peace. Beatrice woke with a strange heaviness in her body, as if sleep had abandoned her halfway through the night. Her steps were slow. Her smile, usually effortless, trembled at the edges. She tried to laugh it away, telling herself it was only weakness, only a passing illness. By midday, her hands began to shake. The bowl slipped from her fingers and shattered on the ground. Gas filled the compound. Beatrice reached for the wall, but her legs failed her. She collapsed, her body folding into itself as if it no longer remembered how to stand. Voices rose in panic. Call the healer. Bring water. What happened to her? Caroline stood frozen. She watched as neighbors rushed in, lifting Beatrice with care, calling her name over and over. The sound of her sister's breathing, uneven, strained, cut deeper than any scream. Caroline's heart pounded so loudly she feared others could hear it. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. The healer came, checking Beatrice's pulse, her eyes, her tongue. Confusion spread across his face. He muttered words that made no sense. This was not a normal sickness. This was something darker. Something hidden. Beatrice drifted in and out of consciousness, her lips dry, her skin pale. When her eyes opened briefly, they searched the room until they found Caroline. She reached out weakly. Sister. The word struck Caroline like a blade. Caroline took her hand, forcing herself to stay steady. Her smile returned, soft, comforting, familiar. But inside, fear clawed at her chest. Sweat gathered along her spine. Every breath felt stolen. What if they find out? The village buzzed with questions. Whispers replaced laughter. Mothers pulled their daughters closer. No one understood how the healthiest girl in the village could fall so suddenly, so violently. Chinidu arrived, his face tight with worry. He stood beside Beatrice's mat, helpless, angry at fate itself. His concern was visible, raw, and it burned Caroline's eyes. This was never what she wanted. Not this. Not like this. As the sun set, Beatrice's condition worsened. Her body trembled. Her voice faded. Each shallow breath felt like a countdown Caroline could not stop. Guilt wrapped around Caroline's heart, squeezing harder with every passing moment. The victory she once imagined now tasted like ash. She wanted to scream the truth, to undo the past, to wake up from the nightmare she had created with one silent choice. But fear sealed her lips. That night, Caroline sat beside her sister, holding her hand as it grew colder. Tears slid down her face silently, falling onto the mat like confessions no one heard. I only wanted. The truth did not arrive gently. It fell into the room like a heavy stone, shattering the fragile hope everyone had been holding. The healer's suspicions grew. The signs were no longer hidden. Whispers turned into sharp questions, and sharp questions demanded answers. Caroline could no longer breathe under the weight of her silence. Her knees gave way, and she fell before the family, before the elders, before the sister whose life now flickered like a fading flame. Her voice shook as words spilled out, broken, rushed, desperate. She confessed everything. The water. The poison. The smile that lied. The room erupted. Cries of disbelief echoed off the walls. Their mother screamed, beating her chest, torn between rage and grief. Chinidu stepped back as if struck, his face drained of all color. Neighbors covered their mouths, unable to understand how love could turn so cruel. Caroline lowered her head, tears soaking the ground beneath her. She did not defend herself. There was nothing left to protect. I deserve whatever comes next. Beatrice lay quietly through it all, her breathing shallow, her body weak. When the noise settled, when the anger paused to catch its breath, she slowly turned her head toward her sister. Her eyes were tired. But they were clear. Everyone waited for hatred. For curses. For rejection. Instead, Beatrice spoke softly. I felt it, she said. Not just in my body, but in my heart. Something was wrong. She reached for Caroline's trembling hand. The room froze. Caroline looked up, confused, terrified. Why, she whispered. After what I did, how can you look at me? Beatrice's lips trembled into the faintest smile. Because if I carry your hate inside me, then the poison wins twice. Was forgiveness possible after such betrayal? Tears flowed freely now, tears of shock, of pain, of something close to grace. Beatrice's forgiveness did not erase the damage. It did not undo the suffering. But it broke the cycle that envy had started. Their family was forever changed. Trust lay in ruins. Love had been wounded deeply. Yet in that broken place, something rare appeared, mercy where vengeance was expected. Caroline sobbed openly, her guilt fully exposed. Forgiveness did not free her from consequence, but it freed Beatrice from bitterness. And that choice became her strength. The village would remember the story for years, not just as a tale of jealousy and betrayal, but as a reminder of what the human heart can choose, even in unbearable pain. As Beatrice closed her eyes, holding her sister's hand, one truth became clear. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is the bravest refusal to let darkness have the final word. The village held its breath. Chinedu entered the compound quietly, his steps measured, but his eyes never left Beatrice. She lay on the mat, fragile and pale, the weight of the poison still etched into every line of her body. Yet even in her weakness, she lifted her head when she saw him. He knelt beside her, taking her hand gently into his. Sister Beatrice, he whispered, his voice steady, warm, unwavering. I am here. I will not leave. The room seemed to still, as if time itself recognized the gravity of his choice. The villagers peeked from their compounds, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Others pressed hands to their mouths, uncertain if they should dare hope. Could love truly survive such devastation? Beatrice tried to speak, her lips trembling. You will stay. Chinedu smiled softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. I will stay. Every day. Through every pain. I chose you, not for what you can give me, not for what is lost or broken, but for who you are. Caroline watched from the doorway, her chest tightening with guilt and awe. Even after all I've done, he still sees her. He still loves her. Beatrice's eyes glimmered, a faint smile breaking through the pale lines of suffering. Why would you choose me? She asked, a whisper carried on shaky breath. Because love does not look for perfection, Chinedu said, pressing her hand to his chest. It looks for the soul. And your soul shines brighter than anything I have ever known. The rest is just the world's weight. I will carry it with you. Tears welled in Beatrice's eyes, not from despair, but from the strange, delicate relief that sometimes comes when the heart finally finds its anchor. The villagers, once full of whispers and judgment, began to soften. They watched the man they had admired, the one they believed could be swayed by beauty or youth, kneel in steadfast devotion to the sister scarred by envy and misfortune. Even Caroline felt a pang of clarity. She had thought her sister's light could be dimmed, that love could be manipulated, stolen. And yet, here it was, pure, unshaken, untouched by poison. So love can survive even the worst of our sins. Chinedu rose, steadying Beatrice in his arms, carrying her as gently as if she were made of the most fragile glass. The villagers stepped aside, their silence now full of respect and wonder. The world had been cruel, yes, but here, in this moment, love endured. Days turned into weeks, and Beatrice's body remained fragile, but Chinedu never left her side. Together, they faced the whispers, the pity, the reminders of what had been lost, but together, they built a space of tenderness and trust. The village learned something rare, that devotion does not demand perfection, it demands courage, patience, and an unwavering heart. Beatrice's smile returned gradually, faint but real. Caroline, watching quietly, understood a truth she had been blind to. Love is not a thing to be stolen or earned by envy. It is chosen. Years had passed, yet the air around Caroline seemed heavier than anyone else's. The village had changed, new crops, new children laughing in the streets, new stories whispered under the shade of palm trees, but she remained the same, a living shadow of her own past. She moved quietly among the compounds, speaking to young girls at the well, in the market, and by the river. Her words were simple, yet piercing. Envy is a poison, she would say, her voice steady but filled with the weight of memory. It spreads quietly, invisibly, until it destroys the very thing you should cherish most. People whispered behind her back. Some called her the cautionary sister, others avoided her gaze, uncomfortable with the truth she carried. Caroline did not mind. She had chosen this path, and every day it reminded her of what happens when the heart is led astray. Can one ever truly forgive oneself? She thought, staring into the river where she and Beatrice had played as children. The reflection of the water seemed darker than usual, as if holding the shadow of every decision she had made. When she passed the compounds where children played, she sometimes saw echoes of what could have been, a sister laughing freely, unburdened by fear or pain, a man devoted not to the shadow of envy but to love itself. She closed her eyes, letting the memory ache inside her chest. Yet she spoke to the girls anyway. She told them the story without softening it, without hiding her own shame. I poisoned my sister because I envied her, she confessed once, her hands trembling slightly. I wanted what she had, her beauty, her kindness, her love. And I almost destroyed her, and myself. Remember me, so you do not make the same mistake. Some girls listened, wide-eyed and shaken. Others wept, realizing that envy was not a harmless feeling, it was a slow, creeping danger. Caroline let them go, knowing that even if they never spoke of her again, the seed of caution had been planted. At night, she returned to her simple heart, the walls lined with reminders of a life lived differently from her sister's. She thought of Beatrice, smiling, forgiving, and living with grace despite pain, and felt the sharp contrast of her own burden. Every ache, every pang of regret, every sleepless night was hers to carry. Is this my punishment? Or my purpose? She wondered, staring at the dim glow of the lamp. Perhaps it was both. Perhaps carrying the weight of guilt could prevent others from falling into the same trap. Perhaps her suffering could be made meaningful if it taught someone else to choose differently. The sun would rise, and Caroline would rise with it. She would tell her story again, always the same, always raw, because each telling was a reminder, not of vengeance, not of hope, not of redemption, but of choice. One day, she realized, the girls she warned would grow into women, and perhaps they would spare someone else the darkness that had consumed her. Her own life was not filled with happiness or love, not in the way her sister's had been. But it had a purpose. A quiet, painful purpose.